Hi people, hope you're all well. Nicer day here. It was horrible weather yesterday, grey and wet and not very pleasant. It's actually a nicer day, although it's the 1st of October. Um, I'm not quite sure where to start with this one because I'm thinking of the angle I want to take with it. As always with my videos, I'm very spontaneous. I never really plan videos in the sense that I never make notes. I never think, okay, I'm going to talk about this and this is the first part I'm going to talk about. And I don't choreograph it like that. I don't plan it meticulously because I think this way, this spontaneous approach is, it's not that I wouldn't be sincere with planning it, but I just think this is natural. It's a way, maybe I'm also just lazy. It could also be that. But I have come across an interesting article. It was about, well, interesting. It was from a site called NPR, which had sort of been wavering on for a while now because I've always found it's quite woke left. It's an American site. I forget what I'm not sure what NPR stands for. National. I don't know. I don't know what it stands for, but they have a lot of articles which are, in my opinion, race baiting, and this was just yet another. So the article was about why there's so few black members in classical orchestras. It's very, very low, apparently 1.4%, which is very low. There's much bigger East Asian representation in classical music. I responded sort of instinctively, well, how many white players are there in the NBA? The point I was making was if you're going to look at organizations and bodies and institutions and so on by their racial makeup, then should that be consistent? I mean, why are there so few black players in orchestras, and why are there few white players in the NBA? Why is that? Um, one thing I really find hard to respect about the American left, and it has definitely come over here as well, is the weaponizing of race. Now, what I mean by this is it's almost impossible to have a debate or a discussion about almost any subject race related um without people trying to interject some sort of prejudice or bigotry. In a lot of orchestras today, I'm not going to say there wasn't racism in the past. We all know there was institutional racism, right? Particularly in America. But actually, orchestras have blind casting today. Um, And it depends on the size of the orchestra. It depends whether it's professional or amateur. In the UK, my father's a classical musician. It's an amateur orchestra. The I think it's called the. That's embarrassing. I forget the name now, but I think it's the Dumfries Sicilian Orchestra. Or it might anyway. It's a Scottish orchestra, but it's an amateur orchestra, and they're pretty good. But they're amateur level, so they don't get sort of funding a professional orchestra would get. He used to be at the Sunderland Symphony. Um, but anyway, the comment thread got into a whole thing about institutional racism, and this is always a traction that goes down. And someone wrote the comment, "Oh, it's because black musicians are far too busy producing better music," and that got into a thing about, well, I respond, well, it's all down to taste, isn't it? But here's the thing. I thought actually what I want to talk about in this video is contemporary music today. I have a friend who's a musician. He's not professional, but he's very meticulous on it, and he puts a lot of effort into it. He's trying to compile an album. I'm not sure what genre he will come under, but he often derails the situation of the music industry today because of the way it's set up. You get a lot of manufactured bands. You get, I mean, the whole legacy, I guess, from shows like X Factor and Britain's Got Talent, America's Got Talent, and so on. I never liked those shows much anyway because I always thought there was a nasty streak to them. By which I mean that, they would deliberately allow people who weren't very good through to the final stages just so they could be laughed at, which I think was totally unnecessary. I mean, it's a competition. Just tell those people, well, sorry, you haven't made it in the earlier stages. But it seemed that they would get on people who clearly weren't very good onto the later stages just so the studio audiences could heckle them, and then you'd have the likes of Simon Cowell and the others just sit there and talk down to them. I just didn't get a good feeling from it at all. I think for any young musician today it is a real struggle. It's not that it was ever easy, but I do think it's a real struggle today because they have to go up against an industry where so much of it is manufactured and there's a whole culture around that. I think the industry has probably changed also with technology, with the increase of streaming services and so on. It's interesting if you look at the best-selling musicians at the very top. It's not really surprising. You have Elvis Presley, the Beatles. Um, they're at the very, very top. Michael Jackson is usually up there as well. But how to certify actual units, this is something that becomes complex. It's a little bit like, I don't want to derail from the subject here, but trying to ascertain what's the most watched televised event. So there was speculation that the Queen's state funeral would be there, or at least near the top. It may or may not have been. Some sources were saying possibly 4.1 billion people around the world could have watched that. I think as much as our monarch was highly respected, I think that's probably an exaggeration, but it is possible it would go up to 2 billion, given the increased world population, given a lot of different factors. But it's almost impossible to ascertain these things. Apparently, the actual viewing figures, television viewing figures for the Queen's funeral, was lower than expected. It's still in the top 10, but it was lower than Diana's funeral. It was lower than even the UEFA final between England and Italy last year. But these are not finalised. It may well increase when streaming services are included, which would surprise me if it didn't, given how big an event that was. Um, but my point is, in the music industry, it's difficult to really ascertain sales. So this thing about certified units, it's quite complex. I don't really know how that's worked out. But apparently, in terms of certified units, Rihanna is actually at the top. She's above Elvis Presley and the Beatles in terms of certified units. It may be the artists of the past. Obviously, there was no internet. It probably just went on record sales alone, maybe ticket sales for concerts. Nowadays, there's all sorts of mediums, so the way it's actually calculated is different. That doesn't mean that Rihanna's more successful than Elvis Presley. It just means that the mechanism is different. Um, No, I want to be clear here. Everything I'm talking about is based on some broad observations. I do not want to give the impression I am generalizing and saying it's all like this across the board. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it's fair to make some observations and see what we're seeing. So this piece on classical music, one guy would say, "Oh well, it's all stuffy, and the only reason it survives is relies on funding." I'm not going to sit here and say that classical music is as popular as R&B. It clearly isn't. Um, my own musical tastes are eclectic. I appreciate classical music, not all of it. Some of it I find a bit dull. I mean, it's my own tastes are eclectic, but within classical music, it's very broad ranging. I mean, you can't say the 1812 overture, Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture, it's comparable to Peer Gynt, for example. But within my own taste, I have an appreciation for world music. I like traditional Chinese music, find it very relaxing. I have CD compilations, which is Eastern European music. I have Russian Cossack dancing. I have Japanese music. I've got music from sub-Saharan Africa. It's all these compilations. I find that very interesting, and I have a big appreciation for it. I like quite a lot of pop. When I was younger, I was really into ABBA. I mean, yeah, it's a bit cheesy. It's a bit, I suppose people would say it not overly sophisticated, but it feel good. And they were successful for a reason. Um, I've got more into rock and country in recent years. I like Van Halen, Jimi Hendrix, with country music. Very, there's a lot of artists there I like. Um, but some people might say, "Oh, well, you're old school." Not necessarily true. I like trance, Israeli Goa trance. I like a lot of independent alternative type music. I like film scores. I like a very broad range of music, very broad ranging. But what I find really pathetic and really well, it's just a way of trying to shut down debate. It's when you start talking about a particular genre, then people try interjecting something into that. So, some of the most successful artists today are people like Nicki Minaj and Cardi B. Now, I just don't see the appeal. I just don't, in my opinion. And this is an opinion. It's not forcing this on anyone else. It is purely my opinion. It's trashy. I just don't see any artistic merit to that stuff. And for people who might say, "Oh, well, it's sexist," male rappers. I mean, with a few exceptions, I find that whole world to be grim, depressing, shallow. What's it about? It's about fast money. It's about womanizing. It's about drugs, and yeah, it's about glamorizing gang lifestyle. I don't know why people get bristly when this is mentioned. Oh, you can't. It's just an art form. You can't say that. Well, it's an observation, and I think an accurate one. If you look at a lot of young men who are in that genre, they honestly think that there is something admirable about gang lifestyles. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't hyperbole. You ask them about it, they won't say, "Oh, I just like the music." They'll say, "This guy's really cool," or it's just there is an admiration for that lifestyle. Now, given the state of lawlessness in the United States, should there not be perhaps more debate on that? I get annoyed with people who say that it's music's just a medium. You can't. I mean, it's kind of this mixed message because on one hand, they're triumphing the power of music and they're triumphing the influence of music. But then, as soon as you try to attach anything negative to, oh no, it's just music. You can't say it's connected. It's just expression. This is just dishonest. If you have so-called drill musicians, I think drill is completely toxic. I hate it. But if you have these drill musicians who are talking about, well, it's basically just fueling. If you could decipher the lyrics, um, so much of it is just very dark and grim and violent. Look at the whole way it's marketed. Often there's bleak backgrounds, are covered in masks, brandishing knives. It's pure thug lifestyle, and I don't give a damn if that offends them. Their behavior should offend any reasonable person. I mean, what people are ignorant about is that this is provably fueling gang lifestyle, provably fueling gang turf wars. This isn't just, expressing themselves. What they do is they actually go rival gang members. This fuels gang wars on the streets of London and Birmingham. I hate it. I think it's toxic. Now, I wouldn't go so far as saying censor all of it, but I definitely think radio stations, a lot of radio stations are right not to play it. That's their right. They are not obliged to give give anyone a platform, really. Um, Judges have ruled actually that drill musicians, particular lyrics, actually led to murders on the streets of London. So this isn't hyperbole. And anyone who's honestly with a straight face going to say it's just music, you can't say it's got any connection. I'm afraid they're being either extremely dishonest or extremely naive. It's one of the two. And those who defend have a vested interest. Either they are drill artists themselves, so of course they don't want their music to be scrutinized. But I just think that there's this sort of double-edged, there's this hypocrisy because musicians will always say, "Oh, don't blame the art. It's just art." But by the same token, they command enormous influence of young people. So I think it's very disingenuous to say that there is no influence whatsoever. It's just music. while simultaneously saying, "Oh, this is we're passionate about this and it has power." Well, how can it be just music on one hand and just a form of expression whilst you're admitting that it has power? Now, I don't want to be misunderstood here. There is a lot of factors behind crime, a lot of factors. Um, but I just think this is one of them. I do. I think that drill music, if you, I mean, let's get real here. How often do you hear about classical musicians shooting each other? How often do you hear about pop stars shooting each other? How often do you hear about a 29-year-old rapper found shot dead, 26-year-old rapper killed in drive-by shooting? All the time. Now, again, I'm not sort of vilifying the whole genre. I think there's some intelligent stuff there, there's some good stuff there, and some of the beats I even like. I'm not saying I'm against all rap, I'm talking about contemporary rap. In point of fact, the late Coolio, who passed away a few days ago, apparently of a heart attack, it's only 59. Um, his piece, Gangsta's Paradise, and admittedly, I wasn't that familiar with his other work, but the reason that stood out was precisely because it wasn't going into that cliche. What Gangsta's Paradise was doing was talking about the futility of gang lifestyle. I'm 23 now, but will I live to see 24? The way things are going, I don't know, right? That was a good song. It was a strong piece of music. Another song I would highlight within the, it's not rap, but within the R&B slash pop genre, Kelly Rowland's Change. That was an excellent song. It deserved a lot more. I mean, it's only got 15 million views or something on YouTube. I would say the artistic merit of that is 100 times better than some of the crap that Nicki Minaj and Cardi B come out with today. Because it had a message, it was intelligent, the video was very powerful. It's one of those songs that I think is better with a video because it showed, for example, a young guy being bullied, he committed suicide, a basketball player killed in a drive-by shooting, a young woman who, was facing the pressures of being a young mother. So that song had intelligence. I just think a lot of music today. I mean, this stuff goes, I can't get my head around the fact that it gets over a billion views in some cases. I just can't grasp it. To me, it is dumbed down, unintelligent. Just, I just don't see the merit, in my opinion. Now, I'm not telling anyone else how to think. If they're big Nicki Minaj fans, that's fine. That's up to them. But um, I just don't see it. And there's a lot of male rappers. Again, it's just what is it? It's fast cash. It's guns. It's a very toxic culture. But the American left are very manipulative because if I say that, they'll say, oh, well, that must be racist because a lot of it is black artists. Now, I could say, well, some of my favorite musicians are black. Jimi Hendrix, Sam Cooke, Michael Jackson, among others. Aretha Franklin, I appreciate a lot of her stuff. No, that's not enough. You're attacking rap, so you must be a racist. This is so manipulative and so, I could say, well, what about white rappers? I'm including them. So I find that it's kind of this Herculean mammoth um, monolith that you're going up against if you, I don't know, if you try to criticize it because it's huge. Um, so all I want to say is music ultimately is about personal taste. Um, it's about what people like as individuals for whatever reason, however the music talks to them. I get all of that. And I'm not going to go up to someone who likes this stuff and say, oh, your music taste is terrible. But I will take issue with someone if they're saying you're not allowed to criticize it or to try to interject something that isn't there. The reason I hate a lot of contemporary rap is nothing to do with race. It's got everything to do with what I believe is promoting a toxic lifestyle for young men and some young women as well. I just think I see no merit in that. And why the hell should it be above scrutiny? Why is it fine for them to push out all this negativity and all this aggression and all this animosity to the world But as soon as anyone questions them, oh, that's racist. Um, so yeah, there's that side. It's about individual taste. I just think it's incredibly naive for people to say that music doesn't have influence on lifestyles. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist. I'm not saying that if someone likes a particular kind of music, they're going to live a certain sort of life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that specifically, very specifically, within rap and drill culture, um, do see a certain lifestyle. Um, and again, I'm not even saying that everyone who likes that is involved in that lifestyle. I challenge those who would ridicule this. How do you explain the fact that so many rappers die from gun violence? How do you explain the fact that so many rappers are murdered and murder each other? Um, some of the most famous examples: Tupac Shakur, Biggie Smalls. You know, you get a lot of musicians who die from drug overdoses, but they were killed. Why is this? I mean, I'd say that violence within R&B and rap is akin to drug abuse within rock and roll. It's maybe comparable, because it seems to be endemic. I mean, I guarantee you, you could Google almost any rapper today, and I'm being controversial here, but I don't care because it's the truth. You could Google almost any rapper today, check out their biography on Wikipedia or the internet, and I guarantee you, 90% of the time, there'll be a rap sheet. No pun intended. There'll be a criminal record there. Why is that? Why is that? Um, so, dishonest people are going to deny this. Dishonest people are going to race bait. But in the end of the day, those are the 2 points I would take away. Um, 3 points. Music is down to individual taste. But people have a right to defend their genre, but they do not have a right to tell other people that they can't have their opinion on that. I don't really agree with this. Just enjoy your own music and live in that sense, because when you have, for example, so-called drill artists who are bringing criminal lifestyles to the streets of London and Birmingham, that has an impact on everyone, actually. And I think also the weaponizing of race is an aspect here, which the American left loves to engage in. Um, anyway, I appreciate this video is going to attract critics. That's fine. Um, all I would say is if you're going to criticize this video, at least don't distort what I'm saying. Um, I think it's just a question of honest observations.